In today's episode, we have a look at some Enshrouded Draconian Vultures, we explore the Albaneve summits and talk about some of the adaptations that plants have at those high altitudes. We have a look at how I have expanded the botanical gardens and this little hobbit hole of mine. We'll also answer the question, why do Draconian Vultures nest in big colonies if they are the apex predator, and the high density could result in them not finding enough food to support their babies, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But first, I wonder what this blue button does. My name is Will, and this is An Ecologist Plays Enshrouded. Hello there all you absolutely magnificent people, and welcome back to another episode. Now, as mentioned, we are having a look at what this blue button does over here. And as you can see here, I've lined it up with all my magic chests here, and as you can see, I have a whole bunch of stuff in my backpack. And if I press E over here, voila! A lot of it will go to the respective chests there. So if there is something in one of the magical chests here, and you push this button, it will automatically sort it to that chest. Now there is one exception, and that is that if you have some building blocks or material you are using to build, that will not be sorted to those chests. So apart from that, everything gets sorted to those chests, which I think is amazing. Now, I did say we're going to have a look at the Enshrouded Draconian Vultures, and we will do that in a moment. It is just nighttime at the moment, so we're just going to sleep a bit, and then we're going to head on over first to this area we rehabilitated previously. And as you can see here, wow, this landscape has really established very, very nicely. Now, in the comments of the previous episode, one of my subscribers, Audrey, mentioned that what they would have done is to actually place down walls. So use stone walls, field stones in this case, to actually place a stone wall down. And yes, this you could do if you have got a whole bunch of stones in an area. Stones are actually a great way of trying to rehabilitate an area. Now, the problem is you need to get these stones from somewhere. So if you now go and remove the stones from one area to build a wall here, that is going to leave that area open to erosion. So it could be a bit of a problem if you have very few stones around. If, however, you have a surplus of stones somewhere, you could potentially do this. You could actually build a wall, and it's going to trap the dirt behind it. Along with the dirt, it's going to trap some seeds, and hopefully you'll have some vegetation establishing. As you can see, I still need to sow some seeds in this area over here. I have also done something else down here. I have placed a second wall down here, and in between these two fieldstone walls, I have done something else. I've actually placed down scattered field stones, and you'll notice here it's not all in neat little rows. It's kind of a mishmash of stones I have placed down, and the idea is that if water were to flow over the wall we've built over here and start to flow downhill, it would hit this stone and be diverted to its sides. It is now slowed down, and it's going to hit the next stone with less force. And when it does hit that stone, again, it's going to be slowed down by that stone and be diverted to these two sides. In each case, it is diverting water away a little bit, and it is also trying to slow it down. Now, it is important to have these stones relatively close to one another. Otherwise, all you're doing is relatively full speed water will be hitting this stone over here and start eroding to its sides. You need the water to really be slowed down, so you need quite a dense covering of stones. What I have here is not even dense enough. The idea being that you keep stones that are in the area, large stones preferably, or if you don't have large stones in the area, you could place some down, and then water would be slowed down. Hopefully some seeds would also be trapped uphill of each of these stones, and hopefully you'll have some vegetation establishing. Now, as you can see here, we haven't had that happening in this little spot over here, which, that's fine. Now, one interesting thing with the latest update, which released a day before I started recording this episode, is that we can also now place down cacti. You can actually craft cacti and a whole bunch of other plants, and we'll have a look at that a little bit later. Now, before we actually go and have a look at the Draconian Vultures, one of the things we need to strengthen the flame is iron ore, which we haven't really gotten before. Now, I have, because I know where to mine. There are some just above my botanical gardens, right over there, but there's also a spot just up here. So if we were to just head on over, but if we were to just head down here, it should be right at the bottom of this valley here, right in the corner here. There we go. This is what we were looking for. There is a cave here, and previously this was an amazing place to actually mine for iron ore, but unfortunately they did change it so that instead of iron ore there are now sulfur deposits here, and the iron ore has mostly been moved away to enshrouded areas in the Kindle Waste. But if you don't want to mine in enshrouded areas, there are some places in this cave where you can still find iron ore. But if we were to start breaking stuff, And searching in places, you start finding iron ore. Now, this is not the most effective strategy of finding enough iron ore to actually upgrade your flame altar, but if you don't want to go into the enshrouded areas yet, and you are in need of some iron ore, you can do this. The other reason I do love heading into this cave here is right down there is another chest. But it is guarded by some explosive fell critters. And their explosive nature is a very interesting adaptation. Let's just get them to actually trigger, there we go, and then when they're ready to explode, we just quickly dodge out of the way. But those explosions are very interesting adaptations, very reminiscent of the explosive termites and explosive ants we also find on Earth, where it is a way to try and defend the colony. However, it does cost you your life, so it's a last resort in many cases. However, these explosive fell critters, they do just seem ready to explode at the drop of a hat. So yeah, they are very, very aggressive and very, very explosive. And the way they would explode is simply by increasing the pressure in their abdomens, that part of them that actually does explode, and then they would rupture along certain seams in their body, certain lines. And I suspect the way it works is that when they want to explode, they, of course, yes, they do increase the pressure there, but there are most likely also two chemicals inside there, because they've got a very violent explosion. They most likely have two chemicals inside that they first have mixed, most likely due to internal rupturing taking place, and then when those two compounds meet, it results in an ectothermic reaction, which then results in the release of a lot of heat, vaporizes part of the inside of the body of that fell critter, and then results in that big boom that we see there with him. And I think it's therefore a kind of a mix of what we see in, yes, those explosive ants and termites, but also in bombardier beetles, where they also have two chemicals mixing, resulting in an ectothermic reaction, and as a result, in their case, boiling hot liquid being pushed out their backsides. Now, one thing they have also done with the latest update is that if you actually look on your map and you see all these question marks, they have put in there what it refers to. So you can see here, sapphire strand question mark here refers to some kind of pet, most likely a dog or a cat we can get there. There were previously question marks here and here, now saying that there's a shroud root there and there's a gem forge there. So the question marks now tell you what you can find there. I also need to go and get the ghost glider, and I will do that off screen, but that is far to the south over there among the blue jays. Let's have a look at some enshrouded draconian vultures, and I suspect we should be able to find some flying around right down here. I have hunted most of them off screen. I do need some draconian vulture claws still to strengthen the flame. There we go, there is our quarry, the Enshrouded Draconian Vultures. There's one over there, and there was one flying more to this side as well. So I think they do move around through this area. Oh, this one is attacking something. It's attacking this scorpion there. Oh, it's going to attack us as well in a moment. There we go. It's going to do quite a bit of damage if we're not careful, but luckily our range attacks are quite strong, especially with the two arrows we can fire. And there we go, we have attacked it and killed it. Now, why do we have normal draconian vultures and enshrouded draconian vultures? What happened to result in the enshrouded draconian vultures being present? Now, I think it is due to trophic levels. Now, what is a trophic level? Now, a trophic level would be the position of an organism in the food web based on how many times energy has been transferred from the primary producers, those would be the plants or certain bacteria that are at the base of the food web, from those primary producers over to that creature. So your primary producers are always in your first trophic level, your herbivores would be in your second trophic level, animals that feed on those herbivores would be in your third trophic level, and animals that feed on those things that fed on the herbivores are in your fourth trophic level, and so on and so on. Now, the draconian vultures are most likely the apex predators in the area. And what happens with trophic levels is that as you move higher up in the trophic levels, certain compounds, toxins, and those types of things tend to accumulate in those higher trophic levels. Think of mercury, for example. Mercury, bad. But if you are a creature low down in the trophic levels, it's not going to accumulate in mass in your tissues. But in higher trophic levels, those compounds, the mercury, tends to accumulate more and more. So if you look, for example, at tuna tend to have higher levels of mercury than, let's say, sardines or anchovies, because anchovies are relatively low in the food web in the lower trophic levels, whereas tuna are in your higher trophic levels. So to dolphins and so if you eat dolphin meat, if you eat tuna, for example, especially tuna fished in areas where there is a lot of mercury in the waters, for example, then you have a greater risk of that accumulating in your tissue. And then that starts doing stuff to you. Now, it could result in nervous disorders, and that was the case with the dancing cats of Minamata, which is a town on the island of Kyushu in Japan. And what happened there is that there was a chemical plant that produced fertilizer that was opened up in that area, and in the process of producing fertilizer, they dumped a whole bunch of mercury in the environment, which ended up in the bay, and of course ended up in the fish, and the fish were fed to the cats, and the cats then started dancing. Now, this isn't your happy YouTube video of dancing cats. Instead, these cats were acting very irregularly. And what was happening there is that the mercury was affecting their nervous system, and they were showing signs of heavy metal toxicity. And so what I think happened here with the Enshrouded Draconian Vultures in the Kindle Waste is that yes, they were normal Draconian Vultures, but in this environment, when the shroud started appearing, the herbivores that were either feeding on the fungus or inhaling the spores of the shroud fungus, they were starting to accumulate certain toxins in their body. And then as the carnivores started feeding on them, those toxins started accumulating in their tissues. And similar to the cats of Minamata, the toxins accumulated in the body of the Draconian Vultures to such an extent that it started affecting them. It started affecting their behavior, it started affecting their appearance, and it started affecting their nervous system. And now we have the Enshrouded Draconian Vultures flying around in the enshrouded area. So I'm not sure, I don't think it is a case of the shroud fungus actually directly affecting the Draconian Vultures. Yes, it could be, but I think it is a case of the Enshrouded Vultures accumulating more and more of those toxins, showing some kind of resistance that they don't actually die as a result of those toxins, but they are affected to a large extent and mutated into these Enshrouded Draconian Vultures. But hey, that is just a theory. Now we should have enough iron and enough Enshrouded Draconian Vulture claws to strengthen the flame here, and indeed we do. So we have all these wonderful things over here. Let us strengthen the flame. Now we've got flame level 6. And now that we have upgraded our flame altar, we should be able to go through that valley over there into the Albaneve summits regions. And there we go. Now previously this was Deadly Shroud, so yeah, very difficult to actually head through. Wait, is this Albaneve summits dirt? I hope it is. Yes, it is. I need that for the Botanical Gardens. Yeah, so we are perhaps a little bit under-leveled for this. Now, the enemies are now also able to dodge projectiles, so I'm really considering actually switching over to a more melee-based character build rather than the range I've been playing as. Let's just check. Do we get other resources from... Yeah, we do get other resources from this mushroom here. So we do need to start harvesting these fungi as well. Enshrouded ice we're getting. Oh, interesting. So it seems as though these fungi are actually frozen. So they most likely were growing, or at least starting to grow, when temperatures were warmer, and then as winter set in, I guess they froze. And that either means that they are now dead and they are encased in ice, or it means that they are not really dead, but just kind of waiting for conditions to improve before they carry on growing. Regardless of which it is, we are harvesting some and leaving some. We're not harvesting everything, because yes, we are playing in an ecologically friendly manner. Oh wow, there are lots of shroud people there. Let's avoid them if we can. But we are heading up. We are heading into the Albaneve summits. This is it's progress. I'm not sure what is being killed over there. Yeah, there's a saber-toothed cat, a snow leopard I think it is called in the game here, attacking a frizzy goat. So we've got some frizzy goats in this area, which are high-altitude specialists in the game here. And they also have snow leopards, which are also high-altitude specialists of the Albaneve summits. Now, we shouldn't be attacked by the snow leopards. Let's see. Please don't attack me. Okay, unlike your cousins in the Nomad Highlands, I see you are not attacking me. So this is the mountain version of those saber-toothed cats we encountered previously. You can see that they have very well-developed canines. But they obviously are white with dark grey spots, and that is to blend in better with snow-capped areas. Now, yeah, we're not in the snow here, but they do occur at higher altitudes as well. It would be interesting to know whether the population down here is greyer in color than populations at higher altitudes, where it is, in fact, more snowy. and an even lighter coat may be better in terms of camouflage. Now, why would the top predator in the area need camouflage? Of course, to hide from its prey, so that they can sneak up on the frizzy goats and the yak that they are trying to catch. But of course, if they are a whiter color, they should be able to blend in more with the snow-capped areas, and if they are a almost darker grey color, they should be able to blend in a little bit better with the lower lying areas like we have over here. Now, they do seem to be cave dwelling, which is very reminiscent of cave lions, which may also have gone into cave systems. Let's just shed some light on the subject here. Is there anything of note in your caves? Sorry to intrude upon you here in your cave. Doesn't seem to be anything in particular here. Let's actually talk about adaptations of plants in the higher altitudes, because yeah, that is what I mentioned in the introduction that we are going to be chatting about. Now, what you have are a whole bunch of conifers. The conifers do really well here at higher altitudes. Now, you have two basic strategies to follow if you want to live, if you are a tree that wants to live in higher altitudes. Yes, you could be a deciduous tree, so you could be an oak or something like that, and then drop your leaves during winter, or you could be a conifer like we have got growing over here. If we were to, let's not harvest the biggest one over here. Let's harvest this one over here. And if you harvest them there, you can see we're actually getting something else. We're not just getting normal wood here, we are getting conifer wood. Okay, well, if we pick up the right thing, we get conifer logs there, indicating that yeah, these are definitely gymnosperms. Now, gymnosperms encompass the conifers here, also encompasses the cycads, which we don't have in the game, and things like ginkgo, as well as some other plants as well, Welwitschia, for example, which is an amazing plant from certain parts in the Namib Desert. But what makes gymnosperms different from things like this rhododendron or azalea over here is that azaleas, or rhododendron here, they belong to the angiosperms. They produce flowers. They are the flowering plants, whereas these gymnosperms are the cone-bearing plants. And let's actually get our torch out just to dry off, because the rain has stopped and the sun is beating down on us now. So let's dry off, get our stamina back that way. Now, the idea with the conifers is that, yes, they've got a few adaptations to surviving in higher altitudes, potentially freezing temperatures. One thing is the adaptation to snow. You can see here, looking at the needle-like leaves here, if it were to snow, yes, some would settle on the branches here, but it's not nearly as much as would settle on a tree that had broad leaves rather than these needles. So the needles there does allow a lot of the snow to actually fall off. The branches are also quite bendable, allowing the snow to just drop off. Yes, some will settle on the conifers, but not enough to actually weigh down the branches, potentially snapping it. But also, these conifers are very rich in resins. Lots and lots and lots of resins in them, preventing their tissues from actually freezing in the cold temperatures. And that is why you very often find them at higher altitudes. So in our Albaneve summit section of our botanical gardens, yeah, we're definitely going to be placing down some conifers. Now, it's not quite freezing temperatures over here, so we do still have quite a few species like these azaleas here and the heaths. So these little heaths here, we can't actually plant in our botanical gardens, but I will show you a way that I have found to work around that. And I think it was released with the latest update. If we harvest them, we just get plant fibers, and we can't actually grow heath seedlings in our botanical gardens. Now, these heaths belong to the Ericaceae family, and there we go, we can have a good look at the flowers there. The heath family, the Ericaceae, being the family to which blueberries and cranberries belong to. In South Africa, we've got a whole bunch of plants in that family. Of course, the Scottish heathlands, characterized by plants that are in the Ericaceae family, in the heath family. We also have them in our high altitude mountains here in South Africa as well. Lots and lots of Erica species, also some other genera, but mostly Erica in South Africa. And they tend to have very fine leaves. If you look there, you can see there, not massive leaves, very fine leaves. That's a good adaptation to have for drought conditions. And you think, oh, well, why are they drought tolerant up here? Surely it rains quite a bit. I mean, it did just rain. The thing is that with these high altitudes, you know, in winter it gets freezing cold and there is no water available. It's basically a dry season because all the water is locked up in ice and snow. So for a part of the year, these plants need to be adapted to drought conditions. Now, yeah, they could shed their leaves, or they could just have very fine leaves that even when the sun is shining like it is at the moment, they're not losing as much water as plants would that have broader leaves or bigger leaves. So a similar adaptation to these conifer plants, but for a different reason. Rather than preventing snow buildup and breaking of branches, it allows them to just not experience severe drought conditions here at higher altitudes. Now, before we head on to anything else, look at that. We have the snow version of the Draconian Vultures. So the Snow Draconian Vultures, I think they are called. And of course they are a very light color compared to the dark orange we saw with the Draconian Vultures in the Kindle Wastes. Now being a lighter color means that you are blending in better with the snow-capped environment again. Also with potentially more cloud cover, this lighter color here allows the Snow Draconian Vulture to blend in a little bit better with its environment than the normal Draconian Vulture of the Kindle Wastes. Now they most likely also have other adaptations. They do appear to be much furrier. Oh, they do look very, very hairy. The thing is, are the ones in the Kindle Waste as hairy or not? Because if these ones are more hairy, that is a great adaptation for the colder temperatures up here. Let's have a look, shall we? I believe there are some Draconian Vulture nests right down here by... There we go, there is one on the nest. There are a bunch. There's a whole little colony over here. Here by the Kindle Waste Ancient Spire. And let's answer that question. Now they do have fur, but it seems as though the fur of these Draconian Vultures here is less dense than the fur of the ones in the mountain. Now, yes, we could scavenge these Dune Armadillo carcasses here. I'm not going to do that because, as you can see here, this Draconian Vulture is sitting on eggs. We're not going to take the eggs either. And, of course, they need the food to feed the chicks. So we're going to leave those Dune Armadillos in the nest here. Again, trying to be ecologically friendly here. This is an amazing little Draconian Vulture colony. They very often seem to nest in these colonies, of course providing them with protection, but very interesting that a top predator would actually want to nest in colonies like this, because it does mean that they are competing for food for their chicks, which is not, great. And again, here we've got Dune Armadillos here in the nest of this Draconian Vulture. I think I did see some eggs. Yeah, there we go. There are some eggs that this individual is also sitting on. So why are these Draconian Vultures nesting in colonies if it's going to increase the competition for food for the babies and therefore potentially decrease the likelihood that they're going to reproduce successfully? I think it is because where you find these nests, it's very often in these more fertile areas, so areas with more fertile sand. And in these areas, theoretically at least, you would have more prey animals, particularly more Dune Armadillos. I think therein lies the rub. I think that is why we have more of them here. There's more food. They're able to breed in these colonies, providing them with protection without them being severely affected by food shortages because there is just so much food. So I think that's the answer there. When we're looking at raptors, for example, the bearded vulture, the lummergeier, those vultures, they don't nest in big colonies because the food resources they are feeding on is very limited. They feed on things like bone marrow and things like that. Also, the palm nut vulture, they don't feed on things that are super abundant most of the time, like carcasses. They feed mostly on palm fruit. And yes, they will feed on, I have seen them scavenge on carcasses, but they feed mostly on palm fruit. Whereas vultures such as the Cape vulture, they feed on carcasses that may be quite abundant. As long as there are large animals in an area, there are bound to be carcasses, and they are relatively common. And as a result, they can nest in bigger colonies because food is not limited. So I think, based on that, I think that's why these birds nest in bigger colonies. Now, yes, I did think of getting some frizzy goats for our botanical gardens, but you know what? I think I should get some Dune Armadillos. So let's head on over to the botanical gardens. It'll give me an opportunity to show you some of the major changes that have happened. And right off the bat, there we go, there is a tree growing right as I arrive here. Right off the bat, you can see here that the Vale Water Basin section is now really fleshed out a bit more. So we've got so many plants growing here now. It really is starting to be a very dense jungle. I may need to thin out some of the plants around here. I have accidentally created a karst lake as well. Now, karst systems are generally in limestone areas, so areas where you've got a rock that is soluble in water, resulting in underground caverns forming as the rock is eroded by rainwater, which is slightly acidic, which erodes those alkaline rocks very easily. And then eventually the roof collapses, forming a relatively steep-sided, in this case very clear water environment as well. Now I just happened to dig around here for a little lake in our Vale Water Basin section here, and found that at some point I accidentally created a lake down here. So I really accidentally created a karst lake like this one here. Now, I think that is quite weird and cool. Okay, Emily, what do I need for Dune Armadillo food bait? There we go. Saffron, which we have quite a bit of. Yucca fruit, which we have quite a bit of. Flour, which we do have. Sage leaves, we've got a bit of. And Oriolan flowers, which we also have. So let's craft that. And before we head off to actually go and get those, let me show you my little secret corner. This is the observatory. It's a little section I've hollowed out here in our hobbit hole. And thus far, we have all the plants we can craft in pots put down here. And if you have a look, you'll see that we can craft these rhododendron over here, which we can't craft to actually plant out in the wild. And we can also craft these little heath flowers over here, which again, we can't normally craft as a little plant to put out in nature. Oh, before we head out, yeah, I've got a little reading nook here, and as you can see here, the waterfall falls right outside our window. We even have a little coconut palm and a banana plant right outside the window there. So yeah, this is a lovely little spot just to chill and have a good old time. Now, I did say that I was going to show you how I plan to actually place heath flowers down, and it lies in the fact that we can craft those potted plants. Because what we can do with those potted plants is to take them and then actually reposition them by pressing Q and right mouse button, and we can lower them into the ground, hiding them. And there we go. We have a little heath flower where normally we wouldn't be able to place it. Now, I would suggest placing them out of the way where your animals are not going to be walking. So right over there, for example, we have another little heath flower, and we're going to place, I think, a little alpine rose, as it's called in the game here. It's a rhododendron. We're just going to place that right over there. And it's almost impossible. You can see a little bit of the pot there, but it's almost impossible to actually notice that. So just looking from a distance, yeah, we're going to be populating this environment with heath and alpine roses or rhododendron using this process. And I think that is a cool way to do things. Okay, let's go look for some Dune Armadillos. So in that area over there, we should be able to find some. Oh, we did find a little oasis over here. There's a bit of water. And there we go. There are some Dune Armadillos down by the oasis. That is marvelous. I'm hearing the Dune Armadillos. There is one right up ahead. And finally, there we go. We've got our first Brontothea-like Dune Armadillo. Okay, so that's one down. I need two more to have a happy little family. And there we go, our second one, and there's a third one right up there. Now, they come from the same area, so I'm going to assume that they are in fact part of the same family unit. You don't want to accidentally go and introduce individuals that are going to end up fighting with one another. And they don't seem to have any sexual dimorphism in the species, which is very interesting. I would have thought that a species that has those horns on front there, most likely used for fighting, that they would actually have clear sexual dimorphism. But in this case, male and female most likely seem identical, which is very, very interesting, at least to me. Yeah, it seems this one just wandered off from the pair we had earlier. Now, in theory, we are using camouflage to our advantage, because as you can see here, I have dyed my clothing to actually blend in a bit more with the environment we are in. When we head into the Albaneve summits, and we're going to craft our next set of armor, and there we go, we've got our third armadillo here. When we craft our next set of armor, I'm going to dye that to blend in with the mountain biome as well. But there we go, we have our 3 Dune Armadillos, so let's head on back to the Embervale Botanical Gardens, and let's introduce them here to the Kindle Waste section. And we'll introduce them, I think, in this lower lying area. There are some saffron growing here. I think this is going to be a good place to actually place them. Hello, armadillos. There we go. The nice little herd of Dune Armadillos here. Alright, but such awesome creatures here. We should be able to actually go into first person. And wow, just look at them. So notice the massive, massive scales. Very short tail as well. Interesting, the stubby little tail. Probably quite poor eyesight. But then again, they don't really need very good eyesight, because look at how well armored they are. Man, this is awesome. I really love the Dune Armadillos. Now, not able to curl up into a ball like the 3-banded armadillos on Earth would be able to do. Most likely these plates are just too rigid for that to actually occur. They cannot volvate, as it is called, to actually curl up into a ball for protection. But wow, such awesome creatures. And as mentioned, I do suspect they move around in little family herds, and that is why we translocated this entire herd. You don't want to just bring in some of the individuals from a herd and upset the social hierarchy there. You want to actually bring in the entire herd when you're doing these types of translocations like we have done here. I think that's a good spot to end today's episode, everybody. So thank you very much for joining me on our adventure here. Hope you had fun. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a nice thumbs up, share with your friends and family. And until next time, everybody, stay safe. I'll see you all soon. Cheers.